they interfere with the recording system, and also can members declare any interest, financial or otherwise, as we move through today's business. Just with regard to your tablet, if you can also turn that to silent, let's function, and F8. With regards to apologies, I'm not sure that there have any been tabled but been notified, but clearly there are quite a number of people who are absent, but hopefully just as we move through the session others may arrive. If you move then to your minutes of the last meeting, which was the 13th of May, at page 5, can I just seek agreement that they are an accurate reflection of that meeting? Members content? Okay. Moving then to our committee inquiry into inclusion in the arts of working class communities. As members are aware, we were to have 2 briefings today, but unfortunately Gary Mitchell is unwell and can't brief us this morning, but we will try to facilitate this at a later meeting, so members just note that he has sent apologies. Refer you then to the clerk's memo, which also includes the terms of reference for our inquiry, and that's at page 10, and also a list of organisations who have provided us with written submissions to date at page 14. We have Hansard with us this morning as well, as it is an inquiry session, and we'll welcome Martin Lynch, who is a playwright, to come to brief us this morning. And Martin, you're very welcome.
Yeah. Take my coat off. All right.
Absolutely.
My fault.
Thank you very much for coming today.
Okay.
And if you'd like to make an opening statement, and then we'll follow up with some questions and a conversation around some of the content of what you've said.
All right. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you. I welcome the opportunity to speak to the committee. I thought I had stopped doing this politicking over arts, and giving it up just to concentrate on my writing. But it's just things you have to say and things that you observe, And when I got the opportunity for this, I thought, I should do it. I think what I should do is just to show people a wee bit about me, in terms of to show that I have a wee bit of knowledge and a wee bit of authority on these matters. I was brought up in the docks area of Belfast, moved to Turf Lodge, the sunny climes of Turf Lodge in the mid-60s, and worked as a cloth cutter, a docker, all sorts of stuff. I've been working in the arts for about 35 years. Started in Turf Lodge and we set up a fellowship community theatre where we just produced plays locally. Then I was appointed resident writer to Lyric Theatre in the early 80s, 80, 81. And I've been working professionally in the theatre since then. I was involved in Sharabank Theatre Company, an all-female theatre company back in the 80s. I was involved in all female, that sounds odd, doesn't it? But I wrote the first play and the first couple of plays. I was writer in residence at the University of Ulster at Coleraine for 3 years in the mid-80s. I've written loads of plays, I've written about 30 plays over the years, more than that. And a lot of BBC Radio 3, Radio 4 plays. Wrote the first community play in Belfast, large-scale community play in Belfast, Northern Ireland, called The Stone Chair, set in the Short Strand community, back about 1990, and put it in the Grand Opera House. I was the key advisor for both the Dock Ward community play in the New Lodge and the Morning Ring in Ballybean, which followed shortly after that. And then we set up the Community Arts, people set up the Community Arts Forum, and I was its first director and ran it for about 5 or 6 years. In recent years, say the last 10 or 12 years, I run 2 companies, one called Green Shoot Productions, which is a not-for-profit, where we commission writers like myself, Gary Mitchell, Murray Jones and others to write plays that we think might be important or have a contribution to make. I also run GBL Productions, which stands for Grania and Bridge Lynch. My 2 daughters are trying to earn money, because a man does not live by playwriting. And we do plays in the Grand Opera House and other things, which we've been very successful with in the last 10 or 12 years. So, there's four areas that I saw on the website that you seem to be wanting to address: general accessibility of the arts venues, examples of good practice, and recommendations. I also took the opportunity to read through quite a number of previous submissions. And I don't know how much unparliamentary language I can use here, but there was a lot of bullshit and a lot of that stuff. In other words, not the truth, or anywhere near the truth. Access to the arts is still very, very, very limited to a relatively small section of our population. Real access to the arts. I'm not just talking about, well, you can go and see a play as an audience member or not. I'm talking about whether or not you feel that you're able to write a play, act in a play, design a play, and generally speaking, the other arts as well would have the same arrangements, I think. The last survey I was involved in back in the 90s by Myerscough stated that 27% of the population regularly attend arts events. In terms of the creation of the arts, there's no survey ever been done that I know of, but that would be about 3% or less. When you divide that up, and the majority of the 27% who attend the arts are from the AB sectors, it means that places like where I come from, the vast majority, like 90-odd%, don't go anywhere near the arts except in exceptional circumstances, if at all. I think that's reality. That's not to say that there hasn't been great improvements in the last 50 years, marginal improvements in the last 50 years since education became more prevalent in working communities, and particularly in the last 10, in fact, since the Community Arts Forum in Northern Ireland created the politics of arts in the community. Prior to that, there was no politics of it. When we sat down in the early 90s and looked at the funding, I've just read on your website that the Arts Council submitted that, and I hope I got this right, if I got it wrong, I'm open to, 74% of their budget has been spent in the 20% most disadvantaged areas. Wow. I would love to know where that money's going. I haven't seen it. I don't see it. Not 74%. I mean, I think we can talk about the Arts Council specifically. It has improved, it has changed over the years. When we came across it in the early 90s as the Community Arts Movement, when we did their budget, we looked at their budgets, we estimated they were spending 3% on working class communities, or under the title or banner community arts. I can't imagine, knowing what I know and where I hang out, that has jumped to from 3% to 74% inside 15 years. So there's no question in my mind, from my own personal experience, that there is a huge gap between accessibility to the arts, both as audience members and as creators, participators. You know, it's still there in a very, very big way. In terms of the improvements, the Arts Council and others, I mean, the Community Arts Forum arrived at an Arts Council that was spending 3%. We actually campaigned for 5 or 6 years till we got that changed. We were successful, but the Arts Council we came along at that point was very trenchant, and the director of the Arts Council told us that we were engaged in social engineering, that you had to be born exceptionally talented in order to be a creator in the arts. Again, you know, my father was a poet as well as a dock labourer, but he left Earl Street School in the docks at 12 or 13 years of age. How was he going to compete with Seamus Heaney or Michael Long? How was he going to become a great poet? He had the talent, perhaps, but he wasn't going to get there because of the variety of social, economic, cultural and identity circumstances that exist, and it probably exists largely today. The Arts Council has changed. Our campaign coincided with the introduction of the Blair government, and the Blair government actually made huge policy decisions which ensured that lots of arts organisations have to have either a community remit or an education outreach remit, and that has continued right through to this day. And more money is spent in by the Arts Council in working communities. Roisin McDonagh was a huge improvement as director on the previous director, and some of the boards around that time were very good, but I think the board has regressed again in terms of its representation of this society. I think the Arts Council has a problem there. There's also a caveat within all that, and that is that Catholic communities, Catholic working class communities, are accessing the arts more than Protestant working class communities at the moment, is my understanding. I can give a few examples, like, and just on the professional actors front, the Falls Road is pouring out young professional actors like it's a Ford factory. When I auditioned for the Titanic Boys, a large-scale play at the Grand Opera House a couple of years ago, I had hoped to get at least a cast of 11. I'd hoped to get at least a half of that cast from the Protestant working class community. They're not there. They're not there. I think I got one working class Protestant boy. I was looking at young lads between the ages of 19 and 30. I think I got one lad. The Titanic Boys, about the history of the Belfast shipyards and so on, was actually acted out by kids from the Falls Road. And that's a problem. In my days in the Community Arts Forum right through the 90s, I didn't actually need to do much work in the Falls Road because there was significant structures already there, like the West Belfast Festival, Falion, that sort of stuff. But we decided to set up the Greater East Belfast Community Arts Network, which was the bane of my life for the next 5 years. It kept collapsing through lack of interest. I had to go in, dig out community people on 2 different occasions to resurrect it again. And it eventually collapsed, and we never got it function. General lack of interest, the arts aren't for me, that sort of stuff. So there's an issue there between Catholic working class areas and Protestant working class areas and their contribution to the arts. Arts venues. For me, this is where we begin to look at the core problem. If you look at the Arts Council's biggest funded organisations, the Ulster Orchestra, 2 million out of, anybody know what the latest Arts Council voted Exchequer funds is for the year? I can't remember. It used to be around 10 million. I think it may be about 13 at the moment. Anybody know? No. Whatever. The Ulster Orchestra gets something like, I forget, a huge percentage, but it's around 2.1 million at the moment. The Lyric Theatre's in receipt of 1.1 million or something like that. The Max in receipt of 1 million. And it's these organisations, in my opinion. There's a few others around 500,000, like the Grand Opera House and a few others, Northern Ireland Opera. It's these organisations who get public funding, large wallop of public funding, should be doing more. About 15 years ago, when my kids were at Holy Trinity Primary School in Turf Lodge, my daughter Gráinne came home one day all excited. She says, Daddy, the Ulster Orchestra is coming tomorrow. I thought, God, that's great, brilliant. She went to school the next day, and the Ulster Orchestra stayed for about an hour and a half. They put a trombone in her hand, and then a cello, and then they played a tune at the end. Boom, gone. One has never seen the Ulster Orchestra since. I don't know what their education outreach dimensions like today, but if it's anything like what it was then, this is teasing. This is called parachuting. And I think there is a problem. I'll deal with it a bit more later on in terms of examples of good practice. But what the Blair government brought in were it kind of forced professional arts organisations to engage in the community. What it has resulted in is a lot of parachuting, a lot of ticking of boxes that organisations have to do to get their funds. I think the Arts Council do make it a prerequisite when they fund that you have to do education outreach. In our last couple of productions for Green Shoot, Meeting at Namgate, which was about a policeman's daughter who met her father's killer many years later, a post-Troubles issue, looking at the victims and so on. We did a normal thing of what the Arts Council sort of suggests we do, and we went around the various community groups. And the kind of tiredness and scepticism of those groups at us arriving at their door was palpable. All the professional theatre companies, right there, professional arts organisations, right from the Ulster Orchestra down to Green Shoot Productions and loads of others, about maybe 8 professional theatre companies in Belfast, are hitting the same groups. And we're getting in, we're doing 6 workshops for them, like a train pass, and we're away again. And there's no genuine arts activity going on. No sustainable arts activity going on. I think it's time, when we come to that in the good part, I think it's time to change that system. The MAC has been probably the most disappointing of all for me. The MAC cost, whatever it was, 14 or 15 million, and I thought it was going to be, you know, nothing's ever the panacea, but I thought it was going to be a huge contribution to a much wider access to the arts in Belfast on a very broad level, because it's not a theatre producing company, it's not one single thing, it could be a range of things. My experience in working with them in the last two to 3 years, I'm talking about a year before they opened and we were proposing stuff to them, has been extremely disappointing. I don't accept that the MAC has a wide enough approach to the arts. I think it is elitist. I think there's an elitist smell comes off the building. I think there's a middle class ethos about the place that doesn't make it particularly comfortable or a warm house, or we want to use these political terms, for working people. I come from York Street, which is right beside the MAC. I have a lot of family still living around there. And from my own personal experience, most of those people who live 500 yards from the front doors of MAC barely know the buildings are. Barely know the buildings are. And yet, I see submissions by the MAC saying to do this, to do that, and they've got this, and all, you know. In my own personal dealings with them, they didn't want too many working class players in the building. They like the latest trendy thing from Edinburgh or London, and they like a nice sort of person to come into what they deem a nice sort of person to come into the MAC. Now, you know, they've denied this to me to my face, and they've fought me over it, and blah blah blah, and they said we do this, we do that, do the other. Look at the programming. There's also a whole question about their actual competency. This organisation was running a 100-seat theatre in a small gallery 4 years ago, and was handed huge complex. And in our dealings with them over 3 or 4 plays, we have found a lot of incompetency, a lot of lack of knowledge in marketing, ticket sales, basic stuff, you know. I brought, because I thought my board wasn't believing me, I brought my chairperson around during the time we had Melangate on at the MAC. It was a 2.5-week run, 350-seater. Quite a big outlay for us. The average professional theatre production, including outreach, ranges from about 90,000 to about 130,000, 140,000 to put on. So we'll do a lot of fundraising. It's a big. We need bums on seats to top up public funding. I mean, in a big way. And their notion of marketing was atrocious. There wasn't a poster there was one small poster inside the whole MAC advertising our play, and we were sitting down there running for 3 weeks. They have two glass panels out front, and they were both advertising a DJ, John Peel's son, who was coming for one night. And the same inside, advertising these one-night stands. We were sitting down there for 2.5 weeks. We asked, could we put a banner up in the foyer? Because the one thing the MAC does have It has a lot of people using it during the day. People getting for lunch, drinks, all that sort of stuff. So it's a good footfall, and it's a wonderful opportunity to promote what you're doing. And I found it, if they wouldn't let us put a banner up, they said it wouldn't look great. And if you go into a Mac, you have all these concrete walls, which I think look worse than any banner going up. You know, that's that. Examples of good practice. And again, I have to limit my views to theatre. You know, I'm interested in all the other arts, but my main knowledge would be in the theatre. Shorbank Theatre Company in the 80s, in its first 2 years, was a good example of what we need in this city right now. And that is a professional, community-based theatre company. Professionally organised, paid actors, directors, administration. And they go into communities and they get stories, and then they play the stories back to the people through the arts, through the medium of the theatre. They don't have to play professional theatre venues if they don't want to, but they can if they want. But they should be based in the community and really perform in the community at decent ticket prices, levels, etc., etc., etc. Another recent example of it would have been another company at Mary Jones. Mary Jones was involved in Shorbank as well. Would have been Double Joint in West Belfast, who sat down in West Belfast and produced, quite an explosion of work over a 10-year period that had a strong community ethos and basis, but done on a professional level. If you go just a bit wider in terms of ticket prices and so on for our professional theatre venues, you have examples of the Citizens Theatre in Glasgow, who I think every Monday charge a fiver, or whatever. I can't remember. It was a fiver a few years ago. I don't know what it is now. But it was a Monday night when it was a very cheap price, and that meant people who were unemployed or whatever. I mean, the Citizens Theatre in Glasgow is right beside the Gorbals, if any of you know. And a lot of Gorbals people get into the habit of going to a theatre on a Monday night because it was cheap. The National Theatre in London, now I do have to say, these people are on huge, budgets. The National Theatre gets 23 million or something from the Arts Council in England. But they have a brilliant ticket price. You can go and see the best theatre in the world, the National Theatre, for £15, £16, Go further back a bit to companies like 784 in Glasgow, and there was also an English 784. They were left-wing theatre companies who just perpetually and permanently toured communities. I'm not asking for left-wing theatre by any stretch of imagination. I'm asking for professional community theatre. Theatre companies that are based in the communities and would also be a conduit for all kinds of people that come through at all kinds of the levels in professional theatre making. I'm suggesting that, as a recommendation, that the Arts Council review its education and outreach dimension, because it's not working, and it needs to look at it again. And instead of all this box ticking for organisations who don't really want to be there, but really want to be in Turf Lodge or Rathcoole, they want to do their professional theatre. They believe, talk about it forever. But to find professional arts practitioners who do want to be in the communities and find a way of forming organisations. It can be community arts, it can be visual arts, it can be the theatre, it can be dance, it can be anything. But in your approach to delivering professional, high-quality arts to working class areas has a huge array of benefits in terms of all the targets the Arts Council say they have, all the targets DCAL would have in terms of getting people involved in the arts, audience attendances, getting people to make arts and all the rest of it. I think it needs a general rethink. That's probably it. Yeah, that's probably it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Martin. That's actually quite interesting to hear your perspective on this from a practitioner's perspective as well. You made the point that there's very much a difference between Catholic working class communities, Protestant working class communities, and their ability to, and their interest in accessing the arts. Can you maybe expand on that?
Well, Michelle, this is you can throw in things like religious, like the whole Calvinistic approach to the arts, like you don't go to the cinema, you don't go out dancing on certain days, or it's a sin, or as our Brian used to say, you have sex on Sundays and then immediately regret it. So that Calvinistic approach to the arts, which may be dangerous. So there's a strand there that goes right back in the Protestant community. I'm not saying the Catholic Church is made better, but in the Protestant community there's that. Secondly, this is mad sort of notional stuff, but why has Ireland more artists per head or per population than, say, England or Switzerland? Because these other countries were industrialised and had objectives of work and of, achieving that type of approach in life. Ireland had, don't want to use bad language, not very much. And W. Yeats says people sat around writing poems, creating poetry, creating the arts, becoming good talkers, good storytellers. I'm exaggerating, do you know what I mean? I'm not saying this is the exact truth, but there's a stronger tradition in native Irish communities for storytelling, for articulating yourself through the arts, through music, dance, and that sort of stuff. So there's those long traditions that stretch back many, many years. I'm not saying it's devoid of that in Protestant communities, but a son would be encouraged to go and work, go out and get a good job, going back over the years, rather than play the piano. I'm not saying we were all playing the piano in Turf Lodge, but it wasn't frowned upon so much to either be a creator of the arts or attend the arts. In terms of the last 20 years, 30 years, in terms of the Troubles, if you look at the correlation of what happened in the Troubles, when TV cameras went up the Shankill Road, when TV cameras went up the Falls Road, people opened their doors and says, "Hey, look at this, look what the British bastards did this and did that, the other." Walking the TV cameras. Same TV cameras went up the Shankill Road, the doors were closed. Again, that's a generalisation, but there is this notion that we can be corrupted by this, that, or the other, and that bleeds all the way down to creativity. So, in the last 20 years, 30 years in Catholic West Belfast, while there's been an articulation through the politics, say the Sinn Féin movement, that again has bled through to arts, where people in those areas think, well, if we can start doing this through politics, we can do this through theatre and dance or paintings, giving people the confidence, the authority to do that. And that's why you have in the Catholic areas of Belfast and indeed Derry, a burgeoning, increasing contribution to creating the arts and attending the arts, or simply using the arts as another vehicle for articulating who and what those people are. There's a lesser tendency in the Protestant areas to do that. Now, there are some changes. Like the Lyric Theatre, for instance, has to be commended for commissioning a range of writers in recent years. And quite recently in the Lyric Theatre you can see new plays by Guy Mitchell, David Ireland, Rosemary Jenkinson, Mary Jones, all articulating some dimension of the Protestant community. And that's to be commended. But however, the main body of playwrights and indeed actors, directors, to emerge not just out of West Belfast, but to emerge out of Northern Ireland in the last 30 years have been from the Catholic background. I'm not a Catholic, but I come from the Catholic background. It's rare to Catholic. But most of them have emerged from those areas. The Lyric Theatre itself, for instance, came from Miriam O'Malley, which was a kind of Republican ethos back in the 50s and 60s, and that was our main theatre. Going back before that, the group theatre in the 40s and 50s was probably more balanced and mixed in terms of its cultural identity. But in recent years, I think there's a stronger output from Catholic communities. Very hard to put. I've given some broad generalisations, were just my own notions, Michelle. I know this stuff's recorded here. These are my own personal notions, and I don't have any scientific basis for saying those things.
When we asked the Minister what she perceived to be the main barrier to accessing the arts, she said that it was financial. Would you accept that that is the main barrier?
I actually don't think it's the main barrier. I think it's a significant barrier for many people, but I don't think it's the main barrier. I think it's a question of cultural background, identity. It's the plays that are put on. This is where I would have trouble with the MAC. The product that's put on. I used to write a lot of my plays through the filter of my mother or my sisters. Would they like this? Would they go and see this? Would they get anything out of this? And most of the stuff that goes on the MAC attracts the young, trendy, middle-class kid from up in South Belfast who goes down to the MAC and sees edgy arts activity. Does it attract Aaron Murray, who lives in Upper Meadow Street? No. Does it attract Art Lorraine, who lives in Atlantic Avenue? No. So I think it's I think those are facts that speak for themselves.
Although, as that said a couple of weeks ago, when you were in the audience as well as myself, when Tartan was put on in the MAC.
Yes.
And again, that was something which came very much from the community. It was very raw and told a very real story.
I'll give you an example. I'll talk to you about Tartan very briefly because it's a good example of what's going on there. William Mitchell and Bobby Niblock, who are the creators of Tartan, have been talking for over 10 years. I first met the two of them 10 years. They want to do professional theatre. And I have been actually beating them two around the head, encouraging them, make myself available as an editor or a director, whatever. And it's only 10 years later that they finally got their act together. I don't think I'm insulting to them, I'm friends with both of them. But it took them a long time to actually get this stage where Tartan arrived, and Tartan was brilliant, excellent production. And more of that the better. But this sort of lethargic approach, they obviously put other things over and above that as a list on their agenda of things to do. And I'm not criticising for that, I'm just telling you that was, whereas, there was a young lad in West Belfast called Tony Devlin, came to me 10 years ago when I got out of drama school, asked me for advice on what to do, blah, blah, blah. 3 weeks later, he had a play on the Black Box. The man hasn't stopped since. He's churning the theatre in West Belfast like there's no tomorrow. Boom, going at it. And I think these are some of the difference between Protestant and working class, Protestant and Catholic areas, or Protestant and Catholic approach to the arts at this point.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bradley.
Thanks very much. Morning, Martin.
Hiya, Dominic.
And thanks very much for your presentation this morning. One of the points you mentioned was the issue or the claim by the Arts Centre that spends something like 74% of its budget in the in the most deprived areas.
Yes.
Yeah. I think when the Arts Council were here, or during the course of these sessions anyway, I questioned that. I think part of the reason for that is that the Lyric and Opera House and the MAC, that they sort of abut areas which are economically deprived. So in theory the money is spent within those areas, but in practice it goes into those big venues. So I would agree with you, there's probably no change from your original perception on that. Just I remember that the Sharabank Theatre Company you mentioned there, and I remember they did a play about the linen trade. Was it Tie Up Your Ends?
Lay Up Your Ends. I wrote.
Yeah, and it came to Newry, and I took my mother to it because she used to be a worker in the linen mill, and she really enjoyed it. And I think it's a good example of how, as you say, community-based plays based on the community story,
Yeah.
and it can appeal to a wider audience. Then you mentioned Double Joint. Is Double Joint still in existence?
No, that was just about 4 or 5 years ago.
Right. Well, that's the sort of model that you're proposing as a means of sort of breaking down the barrier. I was going to ask you, why is it that companies like Shara Bank and Double Joint don't seem to have a relatively short lifespan and then go out of existence?
That's a difficult question to answer. John McGrath, the great innovator of professional community theatre in Britain in the 60s and 70s, said that every professional theatre company shouldn't last any longer than 10 years,
right.
Just from a creative energy point of view. He had to be voted off the board 30 years later because he wouldn't. but that's another issue. I think what happens is that the people with passion who create these exciting theatre companies burn themselves out. Shara Bank burned themselves out. Like, Lay Up Your Ends is the only time in the history of theatre in Belfast, in my time and probably ever, where we performed in every single geographical community in the greater Belfast area, including the Malone Road. I mean, every single district we performed in our community centres with Lay Up Your Ends in 83 and 84. Never been done before or since. And that's a huge amount of energy, but what happens is these professional actors, again, I know I'm being recorded and all that stuff, they like dressing rooms with lights, and they get names and lights and like a bit of comfort and all. And after I've done a certain amount of time on the cold face of community theatre, they want to move on to the Abbey or the Lyric and so on. So people move on. I think with Double Joint, it ran into financial difficulties. And the same again, certain people would have moved on. I think Mary Jones had written herself out at that stage, and because she was churning out play after play every year, and she wanted a complete change of environment. So I think for a variety of artistic and creative energy reasons, I mean, doing community theatre, anybody who does it should get double the money you get for working in the Lyric Theatre, because it's much more difficult. It's much more energy sapping. It's much more difficult to create, and instead the wages are less. So it's hard to keep it going. But what does happen is you get a lot of other theatre companies who've been going 10, 20, 25 years in Northern Ireland, and well.
I was just thinking also of the local dramatic societies that you have throughout Belfast and in the provincial towns and even the rural areas. I've been a member of a few of them in my time, but I noticed that the rural dramatic societies, they seem to be able to relate very closely to the local community, and the mixture of people you get in the casts are from various backgrounds, not their typical, say, Belfast Dramatic Society make-up. And not only that, but there seems to be a more varied selection of people who come from the rural community to see the play. Yeah, and I was just wondering, is there something to be learned there, from the point of view of working class communities having their own, as it were, dramatics group, on the ground?
I think it would be a good thing, Dominic. There's absolutely no tradition of drama, amateur drama, in working class communities. Very, 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 very little. Very, very little. I think the city and the rural setup is very different. I don't want to be disparaging towards rural life, but if you ain't got a lot to do, and there's an amateur drama company, in the nearest town, you kind of get involved. I think it suits rural life to have an amateur drama company, and I've seen some of the best theatre And these companies, you know, like I've actually opened the Carrickmore Drama Festival, the Larne Drama Festival. There's a huge amount of talent. It's a great activity for people who enjoy that. My biggest problem with it is that they do other people's materials. And that's where I sort of part company. I think it's brilliant to do, you know, Alan Ayckbourn and, you know, whoever, Neil Simon and so on. I'm not sure how much local communities get out of those things socially, politically, culturally and all the rest of it. But it's a really good, worthwhile activity for a lot of people, particularly in rural areas.
But there might be some merit in, you know, examining that sort of model, and from the point of view of the urban setting as well. My experience of it was the people who were involved in the groups that I were in.
Yes.
You know, they were all quite busy doing other things during the course of the day, but
I know.
they were, you know, for one period of the year, they made time for the theatre. You know.
I think it's worthwhile. I'm not sure it would catch on very quickly in urban areas. That would be my point.
No, it would be a long-term project.
Yes.
I was just going to, you know, traditionally, and even go back, you know, quite a long time in history, the Globe Theatre, you know, the working class, the ordinary people of London were very much involved in that. And
Yes.
in fact, there was a section of the theatre reserved for them. You know, coming right down, you had music halls, which is a form of theatre which, you know, working class people went to all the time.
Yes.
Why do you think that sort of tradition came to an end?
I'm not an expert in these things, but my understanding would be that during the Industrial Revolution, when great wealth came about, and when sort of a very strong middle class emerged, who were well educated and so on, the arts were created in their image by them. And so you had a new society in the Industrial Age, which came after the sort of the peasant age, where there was a more egalitarian society, if you like. The Industrial Age brought the class system, and the arts followed that. The arts is reflected in that.
Right. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. McMullen?
Yes, thank you for the presentation, Martin. Very interesting.
Thank you, Oliver.
Very interesting indeed. There seems to be a disconnect between the arts that you're involved in and what little I know of the arts being the Arts Council. And that's clearly coming through what you're saying today. Is there no contact between yourselves at all, or do you see, when you talk about the likes of the MAC being elitist, would it be any way right in saying that the Arts Council in some ways elitist in what they do?
The Arts Council has improved. It's sort of varied over the last 20 years. As I say, when we arrived at it with the Community Arts Forum in the early 90s, and for me it was a completely elitist, arrogant organisation that believed only really hugely talented people from the middle class should get funded. We broke that and got the board changed. It became a much more broader based organisation then, led by Roisin MacDonagh, and great changes were made then in terms of the funding for community arts and so on. It seems that maybe just drifting back a wee bit in terms of its representation. I don't know, for instance, if there's still a community arts representative on the board, or it used to be in the 90s and early 2000s, there was 2 or 3 community arts activists on the board. I don't think it actually exists anymore. The Arts Council has a difficult job. I mean, I have clashed with them many a time over the years. They have a very, very difficult job to satisfy the need to create great art, whether it's a piece of opera or a great professional play or dance or music or whatever, and allow the woman from Rathcoole to perform in a community play or whatever. It's a very, very wide remit, and they haven't got it right yet. There are some really good people there. As I say, Roisin MacDonagh I have a lot of time for. Damien Smith, the drama officer, is a great progress on previous drama officers. They don't come and sit and listen to me, Oliver. That's one of their problems. I mean, I'm only joking, but they have a view of things, and they do consult and they do talk to people all the time. But at the end of the day, I think they wouldn't have the radical approach for the changes needed that I would have, and that's where they'd be slow for me in creating the change that I think is needed.
When I brought that up, one of the things that came into my head would be the Ulster Orchestra. You did mention earlier on, you know, and when we looked at the Ulster Orchestra before, we looked, say, the junior branch of it, I think there's only about one local person comes through that.
Yeah.
We import most of everything.
And the main orchestra is largely populated by non-Northern Irish people.
Yeah. So in that sense there, is that elitist or what? Or is that us losing contact? Because if we are looking at the arts being disconnected in working class areas, I'm not so much sure it's to label areas, but in working class areas, and especially even in rural areas that I come from myself, still that perception of elitism in the arts. You know, you can't apply to the arts for painting projects and that there.
Yes.
But I mean, the arts, as it were, in my own village there, I've looked back on it, and the silver medal winners at the Belfast Festival and things like that years ago. But it hasn't progressed at all.
Yes.
That elitist tag is still there.
Is the lyric drama still going?
Yeah, it's still going, yep. Still down at the golf club there.
I think things like, I think what we have in the theatre world, because there's been a sort of a greatly enhanced number of people from working class backgrounds being involved in it. The theatre in Belfast is a lot of it's fairly well broad-based in terms of its creators. The Ulster Orchestra hasn't got there yet. The Ulster Orchestra is a product of the old system where it was only middle-class kids who went to Methody and Campbell College who got access to classical instruments. That didn't happen when I went to Barngeek School in the Antrim Road. The only instrument we came across was a Bunsen burner. You know, all that needs to change before you get an Ulster Orchestra that is populated by Northern Irish people. And I don't see any reason why the Ulster Orchestra Board can't put in place an academy or a system that gets people from working class areas. Like it's the thing I always make. The ultimate argument to these venues I make is: listen, if you had the working classes coming as well as the middle classes, you'd make more money. Why you programming your events to exclude 3/4 of the population? That doesn't even make common sense. And the same with the Ulster Orchestra will never have a strong enough column of non-Irish musicians when the systems don't exist in our schools and other outlets to encourage working class kids to learn musical instruments.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms McCorley?
Guramayaga Caherly. Guramayaga Martin.
Hi,
Enjoyed the presentation. I suppose in Wales I'm just reflecting on all the things you said, and it's probably more comments than questions, you know, because I come from a similar background to yourself. I'm from West Belfast, and different sort of experiences have been had by different people, even within the same community. But I think there have been opportunities to have access to some form of the arts, and it made it depend on what school you were at, what the ethos of the school was. I went to St Genevieve's in Holy Child, and we did get opportunities in Wales, so maybe that was just down to the school. But I do think, and I'd be interested to see if you would share this view, I believe that schools should have a much more intense focus on giving children access to some forms, different kinds of arts experiences, so that they might find a career, a future, or an enjoyment, because I think it's probably enjoyment is a key factor of it too. So would you take that view yourself?
100%. I think our schools play a crucial role in determining whether we experience the arts or indeed literature. you know, at that age. And you mentioned your schools. I also have to say that the most prominent school for turning out professional actors in Belfast is St Louise's Comprehensive on the Falls Road as well. Has over the years, because they have a very strong drama department. They are the only school that has dance at, I think, O-level standard or whatever, GC, whatever it's called. So there's another school that has some great visionary stuff. And yes, I agree that unless the schools use the arts, not just for art's sake, but I actually believe the arts is a liberating thing within the head, within the mind and the body. And it's a terrific way of learning practically any subject. You know, so I definitely would agree that there has been a cutback in the curriculum on arts activity year on year. As I understand it, I'm not an expert in this, but I would fully endorse increasing arts activity in schools at all forms and levels.
Just one other thing I want to say. You're very intensely critical of the Mac Theatre, and I'm just wondering, is there some way, because I mean I believe that the theatres, and I mean a new theatre like the Mac, if it's going to have all that funding poured into it, then it should be delivering. And if you're saying very strongly that it's not delivering, then there's something fundamentally wrong. So how do you think that can be fixed?
Well, I think the Arts Council are the main funders of it, although I do think the department who fund the Arts Council obviously have a huge say in things. And I think a proper audit of what the MAC does is probably in order. And to go through these buck ticks and statistics and see who's actually using the place and who's not. They claim, to me, there's lots of different BTs, as they call it, using it. I'm utterly sceptical of that. So I do think the Arts Council and DCAL between them would do a great service to the citizens of Belfast if they made sure such a facility was serving all the people of Belfast.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, Margaret.
Thank you. Ms McKevitt.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks very much, Martin, for your presentation. I apologise for missing the beginning of it. You did mention the professional community theatre, and community has been mentioned quite a few times, Dominic and Rosie as well, and I'm going to continue on that because the use of the arts as a means of good community relations is very important. And I was just wondering what your view on that. Rosie has mentioned the schools end, and many children's first experience of a production would probably be their P1 Christmas play, or even in play school, that Christmas play, and a lot of times it opens up doors for talent. And I've seen that quite recently through a local programme, that's been put out through Newry Moore with Sticky Fingers, and a small film that has been produced there, and you can just see stars in the making. But what would be your view on local government's contribution to the arts, particularly between the communication of groups and maybe into the professional groups?
Yes. Do
you think is there? Well, I would know there's room for improvement there and stuff, but even an investment. I'm thinking of like our own Newry Town Hall, which. Our City Hall, which is now known, and the lack of investment that over the years, even to attract people into it, And I'm not just talking about that local. We would welcome professional groups into that as well.
Yes.
So, what would be your view on the local government?
The Newry Town Hall managed the time and the Arts Centre. The Town Hall's a bit dilapidated, as you know. It's a bit. The councils in Northern Ireland are mixed, as they are in many other areas. You have the Belfast City Council, which has gone from like a zero approach to the arts. When I started, I remember when we tried to get the Short Strand community play done in 89, 90, and the City Council was going to give us £5,000. Sammy Wilson objected to it because he thought it should be spent on something else, or the community was too small, there weren't that amount of money and stuff like that. I queued up, when I first queued up to hire the group theatre in 1979, I had to stand in the gas department's queue to book the group theatre. That's what they thought of the arts, you know. That all changed when the Arts Committee was set up at Belfast City Council, and now I'm delighted to say that there's a range of councillors from most parties who acknowledge and appreciate the impact the arts can make. And I just want to touch on a wee bit of what you said there about Rosie mentioned education. There's health, there's community relations. The arts, and particularly the theatre, in my opinion, is one of the best vehicles for going into an empty space, and I mean an empty space in our heads, a neutral space, and allow us to say things in those spaces that where people might change. I mean, any changing I've done in my head, a lot of it's been done in the theatre, where I've watched plays and thought, that was important, or this was out of the order. So the arts is a great way, and also at a personal development level, when a person gets involved in the theatre, they round up, they get a new vision of who they are and who the world is and who the other side is. And I have loads of anecdotal evidence of those experiences. The Arts Council did a great thing in the 90s and 2000s when they said they were going to build an arts centre or a theatre within a 30-mile radius of where anybody lived, and I think they've done that. So we have a brilliant string of theatres around Northern Ireland. Unfortunately, some of the councils aren't as active as others. When we put a play on the Marketplace Theatre in Armagh, invariably it's packed to the gills because there's a brilliant theatre team there, there's a council who know what the arts is all about. When we put one on in the Strool in Omagh, 20 people turned up, 30 people. There seems to be no real approach to the arts as a commodity for that community. The Braid in Ballymena would be similar, a very poor approach to the importance of the arts. And it swings and changes depending on what council you go to. I don't know, you can look up and see what resources different councils spend on the arts, and I'm sure it ranges very, very widely. But I mean, one of the other things I've been gratified is that when we created the political space for a term called community arts in the 90s, which hadn't been there before, I get great pleasure in lifting the Belfast Telegraph and seeing Lisburn Council advertising for a community arts officer or somewhere else. This has gone into the mainstream now, and it's a good development.
Yeah. Just one final question for me. Could you describe what a professional community theatre would be to you? No, could you describe that?
Yeah, it would be, I think that the model of a new thing has emerged in Britain called the National Theatre of Scotland and the National Theatre of Wales. And you know, there's a National Theatre in England in South Bank, and they have a huge building that costs blah blah blah. Well, these other two organisations says we don't want a theatre. All we want is an office. And their notion is that they go out into their territory, Scotland or Wales. So all you really need is an administration base with a really good professional administrator, an artistic director, a marketing person, and then after that, everybody's hired per project. And that's what the artistic director and a board, and they have to have the ethos, the political ethos of what the arts do in the community, and what can be achieved by doing that. And then the artistic director programs. So it's a core staff of about 4 or 5, 3 or 4 even, and it's, take it from there, and everybody's hired casually after that.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hoshin.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Martin. Martin, you were very critical of the competency of the MAC, specifically. Would you be of the view that competency or lack of it is maybe endemic across the sector in places?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the Grand Opera House, it's hit a patchy stage in the last 2 years. But when I first came across the Opera House at a professional level working with them, it was easily the most shit-hot arts organisation I'd come across. Doug Nicol ran it, followed by John Botley, followed by Michael Lockwell. And their level of competency was terrific, you know. They can bring you into their office and tell you what BTs attended what play, how much money came in that night, you know, and like in split seconds on the computer, they knew who was coming to the theatre, and they knew who to target for the next show. If a Martin Lynch plays on, they know who to send out a specific letter to. If an Ulster Orchestra show's on, they know who to, you know, it's really, I think, really highly developed, competent organisation. the Lyric Theatre tends to be a wee bit sort of civil servicey, and there seems to be sometimes at the administration level, market level, again, a wee bit of not very shit hot. The MAC, admittedly, was brand new, and I would hope that they would learn. But I think the basic, after I got so frustrated working with them, Cathal, I kind of looked back and says, I'm being very hard on those people, and these people that are new into the job. They came from a 100-seat space with a small gallery to run this pretty significant complex, and they hadn't been trained for that. They had no experience of doing that. And so all the basic simple things, a lot of them weren't working. Now I'm hoping, I also know that from me arguing with them, hopefully they've taken quite a lot of that on board and they will begin to improve. But I think it was just a question of them not having the experience for that particular job.
Yeah. Coming from local government, Martin, it is good that most larger towns, and I certainly have the space now and the infrastructures in place. You quoted Oma there, but I'm not convinced that across the board there is that degree of buy-in through the arts, even though the infrastructure is there. We'll have great new arts and cultural centres right across the board, So I'm just wondering, you also called for the Arts Council to review its education, its outreach. Right? Do you see those two issues, particularly there, being married to try and deliver that into the communities?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Well,
two issues, education and outreach, or is that one?
Education, which has the opportunity now, if it's properly bought into, particularly into local government, into the new,
yes,
into the new theatres and what.
Yes.
Do you see that as an opportunity there?
I think the term we have at the moment is called education outreach because that's a kind of add-on to a professional arts organisation doing its main activity. I think we have to break that down and stop that. We have to acknowledge that arts happening outside of professional theatres is a legitimate activity on its own. So you've got to create the structures that allow that to happen, and that might mean a professional theatre company in Oma. It might mean a professional theatre company on the Shankill Road. It might mean a professional theatre company in Turf Lodge or whatever, which serves geographical communities. Or a professional theatre company of interest, like a women's company that tackles women's issues. Professional theatre. The notion that we just simply put companies in buildings and that's the end of it, or that their main work is to create brilliant art, and this educating outreach is a wee thing on the side that they have to do because the Arts Council help to tick boxes. So we've got to break that notion down.
Okay. The thing I was shocked about was that the youth orchestra actually had only ever provided 2 members to the actual Ulster Orchestra. So there was no sort of apprenticeship or anything.
Yeah.
You see an opportunity there for those from working class communities to actually, in terms of apprenticeship with professional companies and the like.
Yeah, it's the same principle in the theatre, the same principle right across the arts. If you don't believe in your head that the talent is here, very often you get notions from people in the theatre that it's only people, you have to bring in people from London to be really good. Like Sharbank Theatre Company came out of that notion because the Lyric Theatre in those days was bringing in professional actors from England to play the smallest of parts, and Oscar Wilde plays and George Bernard Shaw plays. And people like Murray Jones and Eleanor Manson were standing left scratching their toys, pardon the vernaculism, and they protested and went out and formed their own company. And as we know, people like Murray Jones, Eleanor Manson and Carol Moore have become some of the greatest practitioners of the arts in this country. Eleanor Manson works mostly in Dublin now, but is held in highest esteem by the Abbey Theatre and the RTE and others. Murray Jones has gone on to worldwide fame. She was being excluded from the arts at that point.
Okay, thanks, Martin.
It's believing in ourselves that we can achieve the highest standards.
Okay, thank you. Mr Humphrey.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, Martin, and you're very welcome. Apologies for missing the start of your presentation. I want to say, as someone from North Belfast, from a working class background, I hugely admire the work that you have done and that Gary Mitchell has done as well, not just in terms of the arts, but in terms of speaking out for those working class communities. Because it's not always easy. When I did so last year, I got the arts establishment came out and attacked me, but I stand over what I said. Because for me, it's about access, working class people getting access to the community, to the arts, in terms of going as patrons, but it's also about young people getting access to the arts, whether it's school
As
or
creators.
Absolutely, I'm pleased to hear what you've said today bears that out. To say about the Arts Council, we had the chair and the chief executive of the Arts Council in recently in front of the committee, and I made the very point to them: have you anyone from working class communities, from an arts background on your board? And they haven't. And I think the part of the problem then is that those sort of boards go to public advertisement, and there may not be the capacity. People may not even know in working class communities that they can apply for these things, and I think that's a huge weakness that they have. But it's just in relation to read your comments with your working the play Over the Bridge. When you went to try and get young people from Sandy or West Shankill, you couldn't get them.
The Titanic Boys.
Titanic Boys, and you couldn't get them. I mean, that shows we have a problem. Now, recently, when I came in, you were talking about the Tartan play. I went along to see that full house in the Shankill, played to a number of full houses in the Shankill and other venues across the city. And now you had young people from across the, and the best character for me in the play was actually a young fella who is from the Shankill, and played a great part, and hugely encouraging. And we need to get more of that, And I think from my perspective, there are good news stories, as I said, yourselves and Gary as playwrights and whatever. But then you have people like Derek Thompson, who's in Casualty, he's a boys' model old boy. Yep. Young fella Glenn Wallace, who's in Hollyoaks and now more recently in EastEnders, again a boys' model old boy. And in fact, there's a guy who plays the violin in the Ulster Orchestra, he's a boys' model old boy. And those are great role models. I'm obviously mentioning
exceptions rather than...
Absolutely, they are exceptions.
Of course, you're an old boy.
And they're exceptional because they went to the model. But I mean, the thing about it is, after I made those comments, this is what I want to come to. After I made those comments, I know there was activity behind the scenes where the Ulster Orchestra, Decal, the Arts Council were in touch with the Spectrum Centre, but what could they do in that community? Because there was clearly an acceptance that they hadn't been doing enough. And
when did that happen, William? After you
had
your public...
after I raised it at this committee, and this piece of work is part of it. Now, and people contacted me to say, from the Spectrum Centre and the partnership and so on, that this was happening. And I welcome that happening, but it should have been happening, when they're on to it. You mentioned there about the councils, Martin, and this is what I want to get to. The Arts Council, and I was a member of the Arts Committee in the City Hall, and they do great work, and there are, you're right, there are councillors across all the parties who support that. There's a real opportunity, do you agree with me, in terms of the new super councils who will have bigger budgets, more resource, but do you agree with me there should be a collaborative approach between the Arts Council, community playwrights like yourselves, from a particular perspective, and the new council of these budgets, working together collaboratively, you can actually achieve more?
Yes, I mean, I have to say from what I know, and again I'm not an expert in this, that there has been a good deal of cooperation down the years between, for instance, the Arts Council and Belfast City Council. I apologise, the other council areas would be the only one that I really know about. Well, I need to go back. You made three or four important points, so I want to address those. First of all, you took flack when you spoke out publicly. I disagreed with you on the Lyric Theatre thing. The Lyric Theatre has actually commissioned quite a number of Protestant playwrights quite recently, and the plays that have been on the stage quite recently, Gary Mitchell, David Ireland, Rosemary Jenkinson. So we issued her, but your broad thrust was spot on. You said I've spoke out, and I have spoke out, and it has caused me problems. I have a very fractious relationship with the Arts Council as a result. There's people in the Arts Council who hate my guts because of things that I say, and the drama officer who's supposed to work with my company removed herself from it a couple of years ago because of her relationship with me, and I was given the combined arts officer, Damien Smith, who works with us now very, very well. And I thought that, anyway, here the MAC have just criticised heavily this coming out in the world that these boards are going to go, but I have to work with the MAC. I have to try and get plays on there. I've already been arguing with them fiercely about their approach to programming, not only with my own work, but broadly speaking as an arts organisation. And I really want to work with them. I think it's a brilliant facility for this city. It's in the centre of the town. It's actually in a district I grew up in and played about no streets. And I find going to it's hard to get my work on. And the people from those streets, I've also said earlier, don't go to that theatre. People I know on the New Lodge Road and York Road, and speaking to some Protestant neighbours recently, Jim Nesbitt, people got from Michael Street, don't know the access. You know, and they're only 500 yards down the York Road, New Lodge, Shankill River, Gordon mentioned. Again, the Max in the early days, I don't want to be too hard, but the early signals are they're not doing anything like what they should be doing to attract a wider audience. The Arts Council Board, I was talking about when the Community Arts Forum was formed in the 90s. When I came across the Arts Council Board, it was Captain this and Lieutenant that, and you know, it was really a problem. Just after that, when we kind of smashed the Arts Council approach to the arts and got a load of money for community arts and got Roisin McDonagh and his director, who's been a huge improvement on what was there before. The previous director said we were engaged in social engineering and weren't engaged in the arts at all. He believed you had to be born talented and, you know, all that kind of stuff. When that was changed, we actually fought, and through a guy called Eddie Rooney, who was a senior, he was fantastic through all of that. He bought into what we were doing straight away. He had the Labour Party policy that just come out at the time. He had that behind him, which says A, B, C, D. And he, along with us, made major changes to the Arts Council, including 3 representatives from the community arts sector on the board. That has dwindled and dissipated since then, and I think you said yourself that the board may not be as representative of this society as it should be. I think that's something that needs looked at. The new super councils, I think, do have a fantastic opportunity to play. I was delighted with this. I mean, as I said earlier too, when the City Council has gone from a zero situation 20 years ago to a pretty good situation today when there's a broad understanding of the arts. But yes, I'm pretty encouraged by what I saw in the Belfast City Council's policy document, saying that they're way behind on per person funding from other equivalent city councils in England, and they want to enhance their money, and they've been doing that. We got an uplift. My own company, Green Shoot Productions, got a bit of an uplift this year because Belfast City Council has spent more money on the arts than it's ever done before. I would like to think with the Super Council taking in a bigger area that would happen as well. Can I say this? And the difference between the Arts Council and the City Councils. When you get a City Council that's clued into the arts and understands that it's not a wee elitist thing for some middle class people to make arts and drink wine, and that it's actually a great weapon and a great tool and a great enabler for ordinary people. The councils actually are more in touch with ordinary people than the Arts Council. But by their nature, the Arts Council's a small organisation with a board. City councils, the new super council in Belfast will have 60 councillors who are entrenched in all those communities. People can't live in those communities like yourselves and not know what's wrong and what's right, and therefore I would hope that will continue to grow. I think we're winning the argument, William, broadly speaking, that the arts are not, Frankie Miller used to object to every penny spent in the arts many years ago. I think all that's gone, and we have a whole rake of progressive councillors at Belfast level, and I'm sure in other council areas too, who know what needs done, and it can only get better and better, but we all need to keep the pressure up, and great change is needed. As I said at the very top of my presentation, the last study I've seen in participation in the arts in Northern Ireland, 27% of the population attend the arts, and the vast majority of those are from the AB population. Therefore, you probably can deduct wisely that 90% or over of working class areas aren't regularly attending arts events.
Yeah.
That's a huge gap. That's a wrong in our society, and that needs fixed.
The other thing is, whenever, and Michael will remember this, whenever there was an arts subcommittee in Belfast and so on, and it was, what they did was they did away the subcommittee system, and then they just created an overarching committee, and that brought, in that case, the development committee, and that brought tourism and the arts and so on all under the one committee. That actually meant a better joined upness in terms of, I mean, tourism. It's not all just about people coming from across the water, from down south or wherever to the city. It's about people coming from Lisburn or Bang or whatever, into the, and spending and going and having a meal, and so you're able to get, the council, the Chamber of Commerce, because then you have meal deals and all of that creates, and the number of restaurants that there are now that are feeding into the theatres and the opera house. So actually, that tremendously helps tourism and the city's economy then as well.
Yeah. I mean, I run two companies, as I said earlier, Green Shoot Productions, which is not for profit, and GBL, which is called after my two daughters, Ground and Rage Lynch, because I need to earn a living to feed them. And I worked the Grand Opera House with commercial plays. And I think in the last 10 years, I've probably brought into the Opera House itself about 1 million people, at least 1 million people, with all the History of Troubles, according to my Titanic Boys, Night in November, all those shows. And the amount of money that generates in the general area is extraordinary, and I welcome that and know that to be true, If you go into the Robinsons or the Crown Bar of Europa before shows and after them, it's packed with the people who were just in there watching shows. And then there's taxis and all kinds of things. So the arts is a great enabler. And again, repeating, it's a brilliant neutral, on the creative side, it's a brilliant neutral space for people to say what they want. Just while you're here, William, I want to repeat that the Protestant community thing. I think the Protestant community thing, while it's true and has a whole load of reasons, there's also a need for the Protestant community to get off their own arses and do it. And the people who created Tartan, for instance, have been talking like that for 10 years. I've heard that earlier. They've been consulting me for 10 years, and then eventually now they've got their act together, and look what they achieved. Fantastic. So we need more of that.
Yes, and just when you check, Crimea Square, and obviously Joe was involved.
Yes.
Was another example of all the local actors. Sorry, all the actors were local.
But again, William, I have to say, Joe Egan, an outsider, really planted that idea and came in and created it.
Yeah.
And that's not good enough. It's good to start with.
Yeah.
But I'm delighted to say I'm working with the group that exists now, the Healing Ankle, and they're working towards creating their own work from here on in, which is a fantastic.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Martin.
Thank you. Mr. Jimsey, do you want to comment?
Yeah, thanks, and thanks, Martin, and I apologise for missing a lot of your presentation. I'm going to say also Eddie Rooney, he was the grade 5 in decal when I was there, and certainly we revamped the Arts Council at that stage. I'm disappointed to hear you saying that it's sort of drifted away again, because the idea was very much, as you know, the central strategy was unlocking creativity, and that was about the creativity inherent in everybody, particularly amongst our children, and how do we unlock that. And it's been taken over as a sort of a jobs creation thing now. It's become creative industries, and rather than unlocking creativity, we're just looking to create jobs. And I think they're missing, it's the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
It's participation as well as audience, and right through, and how do we get that? Yeah. You got that, and Mary Jones got that from similar backgrounds, and it's how do we tap into that through that unlocking creativity in that agenda. I was involved in Donegal Pass, Loyalist community in South Belfast through the Crescent Arts, did their own plays about 15 years ago. And a writer came in with the local community group, wrote the play, directed the play, acted in the play, and put the play on in the Crescent Arts, and it was sensational. Very, very funny piece of work. Yeah. And it seemed to me that was an example of how we get that participation. At the same time, we're getting the audience. And I just wonder, is the Arts Council doing anything like that? I know the Crescent Arts continues to make those efforts, but I have to say to you, within communities around there, like the Market, Sandy Road, Donegal Pass, I don't really know anymore that the Crescent Arts exists. How do we get that outreach? What was it that spurred you? What was it that spurred Mary Jones? and folks say, and not everybody's going to be a writer. Some folks are but it's getting the participation. I think if you get the participation, then you get the audience, and it's how you get that rolling through. And I know it's like the magic. The magic seed, where is it? How do you find it, and so on? But it is there, and Donegal Pass proved that. You see it in other arts and artistic endeavours in those communities that are maybe not as formalised as we expect to see.
Yeah.
But it is there. How do you tap into that?
But, you know, we all, no man's a rock, so we all learn or we all get inspired by other things. I was inspired by a play that arrived in Turf Lodge by an English theatre company, and that's what first made going, oh, I could do that. Mary Jones saw my plays and said she could write too. So there's a kind of Gary Mitchell says what started him writing as he saw a play of mine, the interrogation of Bruce Fogarty, and he went home and wrote a play as a result. So we all influence each other. I think one of the sad things that has happened, Michael, recently is that from the Arts Council point of view and from the community, I think the community arts sector is a brilliant bottom or ground floor level access point for the arts, for people into the arts. It doesn't matter if they go and become a classical pianist or an actor in Gold Park or whatever it is. You give them we need a structure that creates the access points. The Community Arts Forum, which we founded in 1994, was in the process of doing all of that. Unfortunately, a few years after I left it, the Arts Council disbanded and pulled the plug on it. Whereas I felt it needed developed. I thought that the Community Arts Forum should be like a trade union. It should have an organiser west of Tyrone, it should have an organiser in Derry, Londonderry. It should have a northern, to make sure there's access points being created in every wee rural community, every wee house in the state. I used to say to the Arts Council, you tell me what's happening in Rathcoole at the minute for the arts. And I got a big blank stare back. I said, well, we're trying to do something. You give us the funds and resources. Instead, they've cut the resources. So I think it was a great mistake by the Arts Council to cut. Having said that, there are some great funding streams at the Arts Council that means that anybody, anywhere can do a theatre piece or an arts piece through the schemes that are available at the Arts Council. If you live in the Doak Road and you want to do a community play, there's funding there to go and do it. The problem is that, particularly in Protestant communities, there's not enough history. There's not enough people who are inspiring each other. And as William says, things like the Crimea Square has started a whole explosion of activity on the Shankill for theatre and for the arts. And I hope that continues. There needs to be, the structures aren't there at the moment for that, Michael. I do believe that as the working classes have more access to education, later in life, even a lot of people got educated in the last 20, 30 years. The arts is coming more into all our pictures. We all understand the arts more. I mean, I grew up in the Daft. The only theatre I ever knew was the Mater Hospital's operating theatre room at Daft was having an operation for hemorrhoids. The only gallery I knew is when he said that Dacher Jr. was a shooting gallery and he was going to blah blah blah. So this is the bottom line we all start with in the 50s and 60s. That may not be there. That may not be the case anymore. In the 90s and right through the 2000s, people had the Community Arts Forum to go to, which had a network across Northern Ireland, where I used to say to people who come in, people come in to me from wherever district would come in, I says, the answer is yes. Now what's your question? That was my attitude to get, and I knew that community needed arts and the job had to be done. The Arts Council obviously didn't have the same view and they folded the organisation years later. We need to put structures in place at a community access level, but what we're talking about mostly today is that the professional arts organisations need to restructure what they do, not just a tick boxing education outreach exercise which they have to do and don't really want to do. There needs to be professional arts in the communities, for the communities, and by the communities to as much an extent as we can.
Okay. Any other members?
Okay, it's covered.
Chairman?
I think. Well, I was just going to say, I think maybe you've covered it just in the last few words, but in relation to the fact that 90% of working class areas don't seem to get involved or associated with the arts, And again, you've said that the MAC seems far removed, even people close by don't know hardly it's there. There's no simple solution to this, is there really?
No.
No, it's going to take time, and yeah, and that would be my view. And I think in relation, you did say there that as the working class people gets better educated, maybe they will become more aware of the arts, and it will take time to
Yes.
to bring that forward.
Yes, but I think immediate things can be done with people like the MAC in terms of, again, we're talking about the Arts Council board. Is the MAC board representative of the city in Belfast? Does it have any North Belfast representatives on it from local communities? I doubt it very much. Those things could be changed pretty quickly. Does the people who programme the MAC really want to bring in people from Rathcoole, from North Belfast, New Lodge Road, Tigers Bay? If they did, they would be programming for it. But they're not really doing that, in my opinion.
Okay.
We've clearly spent a bit of time really discussing the Arts Council and the need for them to look at their educational and outreach dimension. But there's also clearly a role for the Department of Education, given comments, the fact that St Louise's is perhaps one of the only schools that are really producing sort of quality actors. I mean, have you got any other comment with regards to that?
Well, I don't know who brought out the scheme a couple of years ago where it's, again, I was only vaguely touched it because my daughters were at St Louise at the time, but they got a big grant to start dance. There was an education department giving them a few, so I think 3 schools were picked around Northern Ireland, or 10 around the whole of the UK. And St Louise was picked to bring dance to a certificate standard level. And that was a fantastic development at school level. And that was run alongside their already strong drama department. So what you had was kids getting to St Louise's. And I remember a lot of those kids are from Turf Lodge, Ballymurphy, Honorstown. No real, very, very powerful career paths in their heads at that stage. And suddenly they were told, you might become a professional actor, or you might be a professional stage manager, or whatever. It's a different way of learning, a different way of self-esteem. And I just thought that was fantastic. I think the Department of Education could look right across the board at what certainly even at secondary level, drama resources there are that may be comparable with St Louise's.
Certainly during our previous inquiry on the creative industries, it came across very strongly that although there was a focus really on STEM, that we should be putting the A in that and putting the arts alongside it and giving it a further dimension. And having that
STEM is.
STEM was very much around sort of the science and technology within schools, but that also that there should be an arts dimension to that.
Absolutely. You know, everybody has talent. Some people around this room may be good at hanging a door, or putting shelves up. I'm not. Somebody else may be good at writing, somebody else may be good at, everybody has different talents. Schools need to be able to identify young people's talents at a very early age, instead of doing this 11 plus thing at 11, saying academic year out.
That's very controversial now.
I know that, but I mean, just generally, the schools for me don't seem to have the flexibility to find the best in a kid. Nobody at school identified that I might be a writer. I'm not criticising anybody, but there was certainly no system where it said that I might do something in the arts. I was turfed out at 15 to work at the dock.
Well, look, can I thank you for your time and how you've very freely expressed your thoughts in relation to this, and certainly it's been thought-provoking for us, and there'll be a number of questions which we need to ask just as a result of the comments which you've made today, so can I thank you very much for that.
Thank you all very much for taking interest. There was a high awareness around the table, which again you wouldn't have found 20 years ago in our elected politicians. That's not, and so I think it's a compliment as to where we've got to in relation to the arts. And I'm also going to get a lot of trouble now with the Arts Council and the MAC and other people. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, members, thank you for your contribution to that session as well, members. I think there maybe are some, I know that this will obviously feed into our recommendations, but there may be some things which we may wish to explore at this stage as well, particularly around the comments made about the MAC. If members are content, if we do write to the Minister just to explore the issue around programming and competency and this view of elitism, and perhaps that it isn't delivering what it had set out to. But again, that may be just one person's perspective on that, but it might be useful just to see whether or not what the post-project evaluation is saying with regard to the market. Members are content that we do that.
I also think one of the important things Martin said was about access, creating the points of access. And he referred to the Community Arts Forum, which is way back, but it's looking at some form of structure that would promote that access at a community level, something that would be province-wide, and I think it's important that we think about that.
Okay, Mr. Humphrey.
Yeah, I think the other thing, Chair, is as well, in relation to these things, I think when you look at the presentation the Arts Council gave, and then what we just heard from Martin Lynch, and we will all have stories and testimonies we can bring to the table of our own experiences, talking to people who are connected with the arts and whatever. How these things are managed is absolutely core to it. You know, you can't take decisions from on high and expect people just to come. You know, and I am concerned because a lot of public money, whether regional government or taxpayers' money, ratepayers' money as well, have gone into some of these facilities, and what actual input do, for example, the council have, I'm talking about, the MAC or LEG to these things, because there's the initial input that there is in terms of the cost of construction, the capital build, but then there's the ongoing money going into the programming of things. And I think we need to tease that out a bit more as well.
Okay, would you propose then we write to Belfast City Council?
Yeah, I think that would be good. Yeah, if we did that.
Okay, members content with that. Any other thoughts?
Sure, just at the marketing end of it as well. The programme's very important, but getting a good programme, people don't know that it's even on. Do you know what I mean? So the marketing end seems to be an issue as well. So maybe we should get a wee bit more detail on
certainly,
that.
I mean, you heard the reference to Tartan, and I know that was an issue for them as well, about how that was being promoted by the MAC. And I don't want us to be seen as us attacking the MAC either, but I think that it's useful because it has come before us today that we do probe that.
But it's about programmes or initiatives that go into the heart of the community. That's what it's about, and that gets the community involved. I remember, for example, different drums arrived into Donegal Pass, and they're playing all the different drums, and the wee fellas all queued up. And I had a go, and the boys who were organising it was over, said the wee fellas were better than they were, and there is that talent and that capacity within the community. It's about tapping into it.
Finding it.
So those are about programmes and initiatives that go right to the heart of the community. Not setting someone up and saying, right, come to this. You got to go to them. Yeah, because that's I agree entirely, Michael. Because further to the comments I made last year, the Ulster Orchestra were in touch with the partnership, and actually, the concert and rehearsed in the Spectrum Centre as well. But I've also then partnered with some of the local primary schools to get the kids to come and play instruments. Now, I think that's terrific and hugely welcome it, but most things should have been happening as a matter of course.
That's right, but I think that was a very useful session, and it is unfortunate that Gary Mitchell was unable to come today. He's unwell, but we will hopefully slot him in then in the future as well and see what he has to say. But thank you, that's been useful. Moving then to matters arising, just refer you to the correspondence tracker at page 20, and if members are content to note that. Refer you to page 21, which is correspondence from DCAL, just regarding the press coverage of the subsidence at Prony. We got back actually and asked about the costs to repair, and that's detailed in the papers there. And the Minister's also stated that a 12-month liability period on the work was expired, I think, on the end of July 2011. So obviously that isn't covered within that. So if members are content to note that correspondence.
Just maybe coming from a building background, in fact, like glass panels, surely in this day and age would have a guarantee.
They're longer than that.
And longer than 12 months. I mean, if you're purchasing windows for your own home, there's a guarantee on them now for 10 years, and that includes the glass. So I'm wondering, should we query just the guarantee on the glass?
We could do. We could maybe query the original procurement and how that fits in. Yeah.
Thank you.
But obviously they have now paid for the replacement. So
Well, somebody needs to ask the architect in terms of his design, did it work? And then procurement.
okay, we'll do that. Moving then, page 23 is response from the Minister regarding cycling facilities in Northern Ireland. We'd written to Decal on the 6th of May asking about the consideration of an outdoor cycling track as an immediate priority and an update on the viability of a velodrome. The Minister stated the Department are exploring options for working with councils to provide sporting facilities and that she is content to include the velodrome in these discussions. And she doesn't actually mention any progress with regards to the outdoor track, and that's particularly at Orangefield. Although it's that's obviously about the council owned facility. So, do members have any comment on that? Would you want us to pursue the outdoor track? Do that. Refer you then to the Minister's letter at page 27 regarding sport in the community. The committee encouraged Decal to meet with DSD officials to explore the potential of the sport in the community programme, which obviously was discussed at our meeting with the three sports that are
The big three.
the big three as opposed to the main ones. That's maybe pulled up on that. The Minister stated that Decal and DSD officials have liaised on matters such as the boxing investment programme, and that officials are happy to meet with colleagues in DSD to explore the opportunities around sport in the community programme if invited. So if members are content, then we write and ask the Department to keep us up to date with regards to that. But I think it's a bit odd that they have to be invited as opposed to actually pursue it, because obviously it's in the interest of both the communities and the sporting communities to have that funding available. So I think maybe we need to just pursue that again. Response page 29 from Sport and I regarding women in sport. Sport and I have confirmed that of the 33 funded performance focus governing bodies, there are 77 women at board level, and this is 23.5% of directors. So they're approaching a quarter of. I'm not sure whether that's considered or whether they consider that to be good, bad, or otherwise. But I suppose it's about really just trying to encourage it. But at least we have that information if we do wish to do any further work on that. There is a paper from research on Commonwealth Youth Games and sign language legislation. If members are content, that we perhaps note at this stage, unless you have any other comments on those. If you want to maybe write to the department just to seek an update on the sign language legislation. We had an initial presentation from them, and they were doing a piece of work. They were doing a review, which they were anticipating bringing back to us, but I suppose we maybe just want to get an update on that if you're happy enough. Moving then to correspondence, we have Decal Legacy report at page 41, just with regards to the Ward Police and Fire Departments. Again, if members any content, note that, and the mood to forward it on to Volunteer Now, Sport and I, Department of Education and Justice, maybe for them to note, just to share that with them. There's correspondence from the Minister referring to her letter which she sent to the Speaker, informing him of her written statement on the recent fish kill at Ballyshannon Power Station. This was something which we had tabled at our last meeting, and again, if you're content to note that. There's a letter at page 81 just regarding early years education funding arrangements following Altram's loss of its funding status. Ken, if you're happy to note. We have a correspondence to Decal from the Committee for Finance and Personnel just regarding Mr Mackay's private members' bill on rates exemptions for amateur sports clubs. If you're happy to note that. Sure.
Sorry, can I just go back to maybe the Word Police and Fire Games one?
Yep.
Comments on it. Just on the volunteering end of it, I think that the committee would be useful to know. It's my understanding that anybody who a lot of people who volunteered for the World Police and Fire Games also were volunteers at the Giro d'Italia.
That's right.
And I was just interested to know, did the volunteers get to know, I'm sure they did get new skills like social skills and stuff, and what they got out of volunteering for, particularly those, and it would be for future reference for maybe different sporting events that's going to come here in the future. So, like the tangible benefits, what it brought them to be volunteers.
Well, if you want, we could maybe speak to volunteer now to see if they wish to come up and give a presentation just really on volunteering and what they consider to be the legacies of that, because I know that certainly I volunteered for World Police and Fire Games, and I was automatically then notified of the opportunities then for Giro. So, I mean, that information in itself is there.
A great database was formed there for that. Do you know what I mean? That became, but just just what they gained, what the volunteers themselves have gained out of it would be interesting information.
Okay,
thank you.
I just mentioned the Ballyshannon fish kill as well. Ballyshannon is an age-old problem. It was built as a hydroelectric dam in the early 1950s and completely destroyed the salmon run into Lough Erne. And always the Irish government, the government of the Republic, was going to do something about it. They had all sorts of assurances. When I was the Minister of Decal, for example, one of the ways the salmon were supposed to get round this thing is they created a series of boxes as steps with water. But I think there was about 150 of these things, and they were supposed to jump from one to the other to get round. And very, very few salmon, as we know, return. And the ones who returned, who made it all the way up, were, it needed to be one in an infinitesimal number anyhow. The other side then was releasing salmon into the river course, and when the smolts arrived at the hydroelectric dam, they went over the side, right down, and it's a 100-foot drop, and if the fall didn't kill them, the water coming down behind them certainly did. So it's a major issue. When we're all going to such efforts and worries about salmon runs, there's a salmon run that has been virtually eliminated. The same thing now appears to be happening around the eels as well. So I think it would be a useful exercise to define through the department what progress is being made, and particularly on returns, on the releases and on the returns. And I think it'll surprise everybody to see how poor the report is and how little progress is being made. I think it's an important issue.
Okay.
It's a major environmental pollutant.
Okay, members content we do
It's a
that.
dam that produced very little electric.
Okay. Thank you. Correspondence at page 97 is a tapestry of colours. It's an educational programme. If members content, we forward that to the Committee for Education for their information. Information tracker is at page 101. At page 102, we have a reminder from Sport NI with regard to their Angling for Position conference in Londonderry on the 7th of June. Again, if members wish to attend that, if they can let the committee office know. Our forward work programme is at page 109, and I'll invite Peter to speak to that paper.
Chair, members are aware that we were due to visit the archive at Swords this Thursday. Unfortunately, due to an illness or ill health at Swords, we've had to postpone that to the 2nd of October. So this will be this week's only meeting. We'd moved this meeting so that we would have one this week. So if members just note, there won't be a Thursday meeting. Members are also aware that as part of our inquiry, we're doing a stakeholder event and committee meeting up in the Flowerfield Arts Centre at Portstewart. So on Wednesday the 11th of June there's a stakeholder dinner with representatives of the North West 200 and also the Milk Cup and the Flowerfield Arts Centre itself. The meeting on Thursday the 12th of June will be followed then by a community arts stakeholder discussion forum around the terms of reference for the inquiry. I'd also want to highlight to members the date for New Lodge Arts coming up to brief the committee has changed from 19th of June to the 26th of June. They requested that themselves. I'm also, members will recall that the committee was looking for an informal discussion with departmental officials around the ADSI proposal for fishing in Strangford Lough and potential for Lough Cowley. We're now hopefully going to be able to schedule an informal meeting early next week. I'll email members with details on that as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Members content to note that? Okay. Can I just draw your attention to the fact, and unfortunately she's not even in the room, that this is Megan's last this is Megan's last committee day, and she's leaving on Thursday. So if you're content that we maybe write to Megan just to thank her for her contribution over the last number of months, and obviously she was a very pleasant additional member of the staff team there, and we'll wish her every success in the future. So if members are content that we do that as well.
We also note, Chair, just without casting aspersions at all, we've now reverted to an all-new cast as far as our staff's concerned. I'm wondering, is that anything to do with a female chair, or is that purely civil service?
We were doing very well because we had an all-female table at one stage, but maybe I'm next. Maybe I should worry.
Aye.
Okay, we'll maybe not dwell on that one. Members of any other business? No? Okay. Great. No. We're moving then into our closed session, so...
This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room